Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, super excited because I've got another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a CEO and senior consultant of BtR Impact LLC, a consulting and training company focused on helping leaders define success on their terms so they can live fulfilled, meaningful lives with impact and not lose their faith, their families, or their health. He has led in combat zones and corporate offices, learnings, the ins and the outs for building teams and trust through servant relationships. Since 2015, he has been the host and producer of the podcast Beyond the Rut, a show that shares encouraging stories and practical advice on how to help listeners out of their ruts and into lives worth living. So a very, very, very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Jerry Dugan. How are you, Jerry?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thank you so much.
Hi, Mark. Well, thank you. Super excited to have you on the podcast today. You know, there was a couple of times it didn't happen because of schedules and whatnot, but perseverance, we made it happen.
Yes. And we did it despite the time zone differences and an ocean between us, all those things.
Exactly. And where is your time zone?
I'm in the central time zone. I'm based in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas. Okay. There was a little bit of a clue, actually, because you kindly sent me your audiobook, which we'll be talking about during this show because it is a brilliant audiobook. But so my Friday started off in a very positive note because I was able to do some exercise this morning whilst being inspired by you.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
So I was listening to your dulcet tones. I guess equally, I guess most importantly, the actual words and the content was fabulous, and that will form, I guess, a large proportion of this of our discussion today. So it was really fascinating, actually. You know, when you do research, actually, it's really fascinating. Obviously, we have the discussion, but when you learn about people, their journeys, the challenges, the obstacles, the learnings, and what's lovely about you is all that applies, but now you've kind of used that as an opportunity to actually learn, develop yourself, but actually not just leave it there. You're actually supporting people globally, because I guess you know that actually what you've engaged and overcome and are developing, that most people encounter that, but we kind of just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, we just think this is the way life is, and there is no doing it a different way. And I don't know how, but somewhere in my life, I just managed to look up and just say, does it have to be this way? Because like I see how things are now as a kid, as a teenager, but I'm looking at my friends, then they're going on a family vacation and they like it. I was in a foster home once, and the interaction between the actual kids and their parents was a loving one. Like they discussed things. They didn't fight. My brother and I, we fought, like actually push, shove, choke holds. They were scared for my brother and my life. You know, like at any time, if they disagree, they're going to go at each other's throats. And, you know, when those brothers disagreed, they sat down and they discussed it. And I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? And they're looking at us. This is normal for us. And I thought, wow, there's a whole different world out there of how families interact and how relationships go. And there are people who pursue the career they want to have. I think having that kind of exposure helped me in my own life realize, you know, whatever I feel stuck in, it doesn't have to stay that way. You know, and if I stay stuck there, it's because I chose it. And then helping other people see their possibilities is just one of those things that gives me like an emotional high in a sense. It's like, wow, you know, this person heard an episode of my show, and because of it, changed how he's being a father to his kids. Or somebody heard my show We've had a guest on our show who worked at a bank, and she's mentioned in the book. Um, she had gone on a vacation and came home and just thought, "Is this all there is in my little town?" And by the time we had her on our show, she had quit her job to start a t-shirt design company. And the last I heard, she's still doing it. And she
Yeah.
focuses specifically on her designs and sells them on Teespring and a few other places. And it's kept her from having to go back to working for a bank. And I thought, wow, she's doing it. She's living
Yeah.
her life, her passion, and she's found a way to support herself in the process. And she's not getting up in the morning and saying, "Oh man, I'm going to a job I hate." She's like getting up in the morning thinking, "Wow, what do I design today that'll help
Yeah.
inspire people through the form of t-shirts?" And I was like,
Yeah.
that is so cool.
Well, that's
That fires me up.
super interesting, isn't it? It's super interesting. I've got so many questions I'm keen to ask you. I guess where I was keen to start, maybe if we can start sort of at the beginning of your journey. You know, you mentioned when you and your brother were tussled as kids, you went into the army, so combat kind of like, came into the equation. But maybe if we can start more or less at the beginning and then get into the rut and where that awareness came that there was
Mhm.
a rut there and there was something to overcome.
Yeah. How far back do we want to go?
You know what? I'm gonna give you carte blanche on that. Where you deem to be maybe most relevant. There might be some bits
Yeah.
you think actually that's not particularly relevant, but where you feel maybe the best place to start that fits the narrative of
Okay.
this
So
episode.
like mentioning how my parents met and how they made me, we'll leave
If you want,
that out.
we can
It's not
extend
that
the
good.
timeline of this episode.
We now have an explicit
let me
rating thanks to
let me go and
Jerry.
get a cup of tea. So
When a man and woman love each other. No kidding.
yeah.
uh, Actually, I would go back to not so much like when my parents divorced. I mean that was an influence for sure, but
Yeah.
I would say by the time I was 14 years old, um, like my extended family was kind of a mixed bag. You know,
Mm.
that there were some who really loved me. They were very caring, very supportive, and then there were those who were like bullying me. You know, called me boat person, gook, half breed, those kinds of things, because I was what we say in the U.S. A biracial child.
Mm.
Um, in an all white family in a sense that was also going through a lot of turmoil. So, they say hurt people, and I got to see that firsthand. But one thing that was uniform across the platform, all my uncles, my cousins, they truly felt like poverty was their lot in life, that they were doomed to stay there in poverty. My cousins were pretty much planning what would it be like to be emancipated from their parents at 16 years old instead of having to wait until they're 18 years old to start collecting welfare.
Mm.
And, you know, there were no dreams of being a writer or a physician or a business person. It was just simply, how do I live off the government and have my own place?
Yeah.
Or how do I get my own money but still live at home with grandma and grandpa? And I thought, there's got to be more to this. And I mentioned earlier, like seeing my friends striving for more, having teachers who asked me, "What do you really want to be when you grow up?" Even my mom, being the stereotypical Asian mother, who kind of drilled in me at a young age, "I'm going to be a doctor. You're going to be a
Mm.
doctor. You're going to college. You're going to be a doctor."
Yeah.
Um, so at 14 years old, I decided I'm going to write Christmas cards to everybody in the family. But this is my first line in the sand. I'm going to let them all know I'm going to be the first in the family to go to college. I'm going to go and get my own job. I'm going to be the first in the family among our cousins who didn't have to live at home with mom and dad into his late 20s, early 30s. I'm going to show that we can walk into stores and not be followed by security. Like I listed all the things I was going to break in terms of our family habits. And when I gave those Christmas cards out, again, mixed bag. I have cousins, aunts, and uncles who saw that as a form of inspiration, and they were like, "Go for it, and thank you for inspiring me. I want to change my life." And then I had those who were like, "Who do you think you are to
Yeah.
break this? This
Mm.
You're no better than us." And they wanted to hold me back and insult me back into submission in a sense. And so that would be like the first aha moment for me, before I went on to high school,
Yeah.
college, and so on.
And what's quite interesting, so thank you for that. It's
Yeah.
really insightful, and I think that there's lots of points. I probably won't remember all that came to mind while you were talking, but I think sometimes when you get people that you see that you're progressing, you're doing things that aren't common within the group dynamic, and they're like, "Well, who do you think you are?" Kind of trying to elevate yourself, and
Mhm.
invariably that, from their perspective, probably comes from a place of fear, because they're maybe thinking, well, they never admit it, probably, that they kind of like think, well, I should be doing that really, and they're doing it. Particularly if you're younger, or if you're a younger guy doing this stuff, they're like, well, how's he doing this at such a young age?
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it, that um, the fear of being left behind might be part of it,
Mm.
but I think the fear of having to face what they've given up for themselves. So
Mm.
like when they see you pursuing your dream, your goals, your aspirations, you're going to have folks who support you and say, go for it. Yes. You're going to have people who could not care less. It's like, do what you want to do. It's your life. And then you're going to have those who feel it's their duty to let you know
Yeah.
you're out of line. Who do you think you are pursuing success?
Mm.
And I think that's because there's this fear that wells up when they realize I had the same dream and I didn't go
Yeah.
after it.
Yeah.
Or I had a dream, I went after it and
Mm.
failed. And, you know, one, they might disguise it as I'm trying to protect you,
Mm.
but I think deep down it's, what if that person succeeds? What does that say about me?
Mm.
Am I
Yeah.
a
So
failure?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I totally get that and concur with that. But I think sometimes people put a timer on opportunity. You kind of put like a full stop, like you get to a certain age or a certain, I don't know, there's lots of different, I guess, metrics, but you get to a certain point and it's not available to you anymore. And it might be because nobody you know's achieved a certain goal beyond that point that you're aware of, or maybe a friend or a family member said, well, really, if you want to be a lawyer, you really need to have nailed it by the age of, I don't know, 35 or something like that. People, that's just one analogy. There's a million other. And I think there's a combination of that, a little bit fear, and maybe some other metrics or dynamics that come into the equation.
Yeah. Or the idea of like, I paid my dues, you have to pay yours too,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's that refusal to see that there could be a fast track to things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I was a director of a team, and the people on it, three of the four people were way younger than I was,
Mm.
and also much more intelligent
Mm.
and skilled than I was, especially in the arena of organizational development and
Mm.
industrial organizational psychology. Those were kind of weak areas for me. I was strong in like training and development.
Mm.
When it came to like, how do we get an organization to get on board with change? Those are the people I wanted to go to, and they were
Yeah.
easily 10 to 15 years younger than me. And one of them was just a dissertation away from a PhD at
Mm.
28, 29 years old. And I know people who saw that as a threat. Like, who does she think she is being so
Yeah.
young, going after a PhD? She's going to be all brains and no skill. And I'm like, no, she's got skill and she's got brains,
Mm.
and she just happens to be 15 years younger than any of us.
Yeah.
So that is all true. And rather than poo poo her ideas, why don't we support her in her growth, her success? We're going to look good doing that, because her success means our executives look at us and say, wow, Jerry, you assembled a really good team and you knocked
Yeah.
this out of the park. You did this, and we get great reviews on the work you're doing. All good things.
Yeah. Because I think we can forget about the team dynamic. And the team dynamic is you want good players in every position.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a position, you've got a position, all the other guys have got their, as good as that individual is, there's, I'm sure everybody in your team have got their own really solid strengths, where actually it's really critical to the overall performance of team. And I think sometimes it's very common that we all get sidetracked by some youngster that comes in, and they, their achievements are, I guess at a comparative age, well, maybe there isn't any comparison because they've done so well. And I think sometimes the way, I guess, not an uneducated mind, but a mind that is a little bit fragile, a little bit fearful, we
Yeah.
tap into the wrong things. We don't think, actually, wow, I'm glad that our competitors don't have her.
Yeah. I I just now thought about this, and I don't think I put this in my book at all, was that how we can hold ourselves back through this sense of entitlement. And if
Yeah.
I did put it in there, great. If not, that's what the second edition will be for.
Yes. Second edition. That was inspired here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pat. Man, I almost called you Padmore, like we're in the military together.
A lot of people call me Padmore. He's,
Really? Okay.
We're amongst friends, right?
Awesome. Yeah, there we go. And so, yeah, that sense of entitlement also, like that bitterness, that fear, who's this person to move ahead? Who does this person think he or she is to try to succeed? And it's that sense of entitlement that I'm supposed to get there first. I'm supposed to get there before that person does. And I think that can hold us back too, because rather than looking at the situation and say, well, what am I not doing that is preventing me from growing or moving forward in an area of my life? We'd rather get mad about and waste energy on being mad that somebody else moved a little bit further than we think they should have or where we want to be.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's lovely that you put your podcast together. You've got your book, which I'm keen to get into. But what I wanted to ask you is around. So the army came into the equation. So it'd be great to kind of what led to that, and obviously you left, and then another journey came, which I guess leans into the podcast and your book.
Yeah. So in the theme of my perfect failure, I go to college. I'm a chemistry biology major, although I got recruited to be a tuba performance major. I was really into heavy metal when I was younger. Yeah, I did a band joke. I'm sorry. Tubas are cool.
You're in good company.
Right? Awesome. So I got recruited for music. At the last minute, I switch and pursue our pre-medical program. And I get out of there with a 2.1 GPA. And so that's not getting me into medical school.
Okay.
Because they're looking for at least a 4 to be at the front of that point, that decimal point. And I had a 2 instead. I had half the number I was supposed to have. I'm sorry?
Not quite there for that.
Oh, yeah. My faculty advisor very politely, without laughing, said, I don't think you're going to get into med school. You can try, but you're going to have some very high MCAT scores to offset this and maybe some experience. And I started talking to some medical programs. And they said the same thing. Like, your GPA is going to be a red flag unless your MCAT is near perfect and you've got some medical experience.
What is that? Is MCAT? What is that?
I think it's medical college assessment.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's the exam, the standardized test that U.S.-based medical schools will look at, kind of like the SAT for high schoolers going into college. And I hadn't even studied for that thing. I looked at a practice test and I was like, oh dear, my GPA reflects what I can do on this test. And then I looked at my experience and I had none. I worked at a medical library for about a semester. And so as far as patient care experience, 0. And so that's what drove me into the Army. I'm like, okay, I'm out of money. I apparently need to go back to school and retake some courses. I need to get some medical experience. So let me sign up in the Army as a combat medic, because they'll have a lot of experience in trauma, injuries, wellness, medical screenings, and so on. So the Army thought it'd be funny to send me off to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is where I was born. So during basic training or boot camp, I did a lot of push-ups because drill sergeants thought I was incorrectly filling in birthplace on all the forms. And so I got good at push-ups. and not just for messing up the form, but also for talking back to the drill sergeant and saying, well, that is my birthplace, and forgetting to say drill sergeant at the end. So a lot of conditioning there. But I make it through. I was a student leader in basic training. I was a student leader in my medic program. And I go off to my first assignment in Germany, and I get tapped a lot to be a leader there as well.
Okay.
So got a lot of leadership experience in the 4.5 years that I was in. Deployed to Kosovo, wound up deploying to Kuwait for the invasion into Iraq.
Wow.
And big learning experience, though. Very humbling. And oh man, just so much about myself that I learned, confidence as well as my shortcomings. And
something that was interesting that I think you communicated this on while we were messaging around that, when sometimes you were doing your drills or your training, sometimes they would, if I remember correctly, they would, I guess, gear the training towards that you fail some of those missions, and then you could look at the learnings. If you can maybe expound on that, that'd be really
Yes.
cool to understand.
So the U.S. Army is really big on individual skills.
Mm.
So they drill those till you get them right, and you
Yeah.
can never get them wrong. So there's that. And then your small unit tactics, they also drill quite well. So on the skills level, they drill to perfection. But then when it comes to the real world, they also understand that the real world, especially war, is chaos. So you have your plan. That's cute. But your
Mm.
plan is going to go out the window the moment the first bullets start to
Yeah.
fly. And so what they train towards is not getting a plan perfect. So if you've seen movies like The Dirty Dozen, um, I don't know, The Patton, A Bridge Too Far, these are all movies that show the plan going, well, hopefully well. And the reality is your plan goes out the window the moment the first bullets start to fly. So what they train you on is be prepared for that plan to fail so that you can create a new plan and problem solve in the moment.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
every training exercise that I've ever done, we call them sticks, situational training exercises. So here's your scenario, here's your mission, create your plan and go do. And the reality is the moment you run into contact with the fake enemy, opposition force or op 4, everything just goes crazy. You lose a guy. Like, I don't mean like he got killed in the gameplay. Like he is literally like a quarter mile away from all the action. You're like, how do we lose an actual grown adult? Like we're all together, or something that should have worked just doesn't work at all. And they just drive it to the point of like catastrophic failure in the exercise. And then the observer controller, or the referee in a sense, kind of ends the exercise. And then we do an after action review, and we start to really pick apart what happened.
Yeah.
What went well? What did not go well? Why did those things not go well? And from there, what are the lessons learned? What should we do differently?
Yeah.
And by doing that, you start to tighten up the communication among your team members. You start to build confidence in the skills that you did have, that you did execute well. And then you start to shore up the areas where you're weaker in. And all that to say that when you actually do go to combat, they remind you, you've gone through a lot of training. You know what failure looks like. And because of that, you know what success looks like as well, and what you need to do to get there. And it's really weird. So in training, we focus a lot on failure, things not going right, everything going wrong, so that when you face it in the real world, you have that confidence that you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. Really fascinating. So I guess when under those circumstances, you're almost training that ability to problem solve on the spot, with your colleagues, which I imagine, I've never been anywhere near armed combat or anything like that, but I imagine that ability, because I imagine combat being incredibly chaotic.
Oh yeah.
And best laid plans, I guess within milliseconds can go out the window. So I would have never have thought of that. Training to fail so you can engage how you react, but it kind of makes sense the way that you've conveyed it.
Oh yeah, and life outside of combat is a lot like that. I'm a big fan of goal setting and vision casting, and the number one thing I think in the military briefing style is, so before you go on a mission and you learn the mission plan, it kicks off with the commander's intent. And they tell you, this is the commander's intent. Our intent is to take a hill, or to take a bunker complex, or to destroy the enemy's capability to launch missiles at us. Whatever it is. Like the mission, the commander intends this to be the outcome. Now, this is our plan to get there. Boom. We want to get here. We want to do this. And here are kind of the conditions for success. We want no one to die. That'd be great if none of us die. But ideally, the conditions for success are, let's say it's a missile complex. We destroy the missile complex and they're not able to launch missiles at the rest of our guys. So, when you get into that mission, things start to go wrong. Helicopters break down, weapons don't fire like they should, but you understand the end goal is I got to destroy that missile system, because otherwise it's going to be able to launch. And as long as you destroy that missile system before it launches and hurts anybody else on your team or on your side, that's success. And in life, having your intent for life, this is what I want my life to look like in my faith, my family, my fitness, my finances, and my
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
That starts to shape for you. The intent for my life is to get here
Yeah.
and to live my life plugged into my family, married to my wife one time and one time only for the rest of our long lives, and to enjoy our lives together so that, when we're on our deathbeds, we can say this was a life well lived.
Yeah.
Um, those are my commander intents for myself, and my wife's got her own. I don't know if they are, but I know most of them. But then, look, what does that look like in my faith? What does
Yeah.
it look like in my family life, my fitness levels, my finance, and then my outlook on future? How am I growing myself? That's where I start to create my goals that support my vision for my life. And then when I get hit with something new, like a job offer,
Mm.
I can say no to job offers because I'm aware of what I want my vision in life to be
Mm.
and what my goals are in those 5 Fs. And I could leave a job. And that's what I did a few months ago was I left a job where I realized it was against my vision for my life and it was damaging the 5 Fs in my
Yeah.
life. And so, yeah, having that commander's intent over your own life
Mm.
is going to help you create goals that support it. It's also going to help you make decisions to get away from the things that hurt
Yeah.
what you're trying to achieve.
That's interesting because I listened to, sorry, the 5 Fs that you've kindly referenced. So within those, do you have goals within each of those?
I do, yeah. So some examples for mine with my faith walk. I want to spend time in the morning, each morning, reading the scripture, Bible. I'm a Christian, and some time in prayer. So just having time set aside each morning for that quiet time. That's one goal. When faced with an ethical challenge, really thinking through what would be the best way to represent,
Mm.
God. Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I know people look at that and say, "Well, that means we say no to gay marriage." And it's like,
Mm.
well, like, I think it's not to get like religious on your show, but that is, I've got goals in that area to live in a certain way that supports and is an ambassador to the God I worship. But then family. What does that look like? Yeah, is it a weekly date night with my wife? Is it the ability to, um, our original goal was just get our kids out of the house safely as constructive adults, and we've achieved that. So we're like, all right, we need new family goals. Let's get some cats. Yeah, whatever it is. But it can also be like travel. My wife and I plan traveling together, so we have some family goals that relate to traveling to like Disney World or a world tour in a sense, or go visit a region within Austria. Fitness, goals around weight loss, the ability to run a 5K. Actually, I don't want to run a 5K anymore. That was 2 years ago. I checked that box. I'm like, I'm done. I don't like running.
I'm done. That's off immediately.
But like a friend of mine's got a goal for 10,000 steps a day, and he's been doing it for the last 7 years.
But walking to rut too.
Yeah,
I'm not a runner, but I like sport. Running's not part of it. So just in relation to, because I'm intrigued around the goals bit, then I want to get into to your podcast and the book, which are brilliant, by the way. So just in terms of the 5 Fs and the way that you use those to guide you, because I'm presuming you've had them for a while, are they just embedded into, is it like a blueprint in your head where you're able to understand if there's a decision that actually isn't going to complement the 5 Fs, or is it more of a or is it more of a process where you sit down in the morning or the evening and you journal it, or is it a bit of both?
As far as the journaling part, I do spend time each quarter, and then I spend like almost a full day at the end of the year to reflect on the 5 Fs to that kind of depth. I spend a little bit of time each morning to journal just where I am. I focus more on gratitude when I do that. Even turning my challenges into something to be grateful for. But when it comes to making a big decision, I look at what is the impact on these 5 Fs. So, perfect example would be the job I took in 2019 that would require me to live away from my family for.
I read about that.
And Yeah, and I almost said no to that job because of that reason, because it was going to impact my ability to be around my family
Yeah.
every single day. Um, Finance side, it was going to throw our finances through the roof because it was almost a doubling of the income we were earning. Uh, but yeah, it was going to take a hit on family. We weren't worried so much about the faith part because I could practice that all day. We had a plan in place for that. Fitness levels, I was probably going to have more time to do exercise because it was just going to be me up here.
Mm.
And then future growth, that was also a plus. So
Mm.
4 of the 5 F's were fine. The one that I was worried about was family the most.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I am not going to take this job until we figure out how do we support the family relationship the most, um, in taking this job. And she said, look, here's the plan. And we talked about commuting between Dallas and Corpus Christi, which is about a 6.5 to 7 hour drive.
That's long.
Um, yeah, I got a lot of podcasts listening in during those drives.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
and so we
well,
worked up a
you could do
plan.
all your episodes, couldn't you? Back and
Oh yeah. Oh man.
not that
I,
safe, not that safe, but maybe.
yeah. Over the course of 2 years, I wound up subscribing to over 75 podcasts. So
Yeah.
if that gives you an idea of how much
Mm.
I was listening to on these
Yeah,
drives.
content. Yeah.
Um, and I've fallen behind because my wife has now moved up here. I've been up here for the last year and a half. But yeah, that was before I took that job though. I needed to make sure all 5 of those F's
Mm.
were okay. And we had a plan. The one that I was worried about the most was family. We talked it through, and like our son was off to college, so we weren't going to see him anyway.
Yeah.
And my daughter was in her second to last year in high school, teenager. She's with her friends more than us anyway. Like
Yeah.
we would see her in passing at night, maybe see her at football games. I was getting home in time for those anyway.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I took the job. And 3 years later, though, I left that job because it was taking a toll on my family. It,
Mm.
it turns out it was such a stressful environment that when I came home, I was still at work. My mind was still
Yeah.
there. I was still processing the things I experienced at work. My boss would call me in the evening. He'd call me on a Saturday sometimes, or I'd come back having to solve problems that never got resolved, and I couldn't quite pinpoint what the problems were. And my wife just said to me, Jerry, I don't like the Jerry who's coming home after work.
Yeah.
I want my husband back. And if you have to quit, quit. I say quit, Jerry. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And I kid you not, the moment I put in my resignation with my boss, everybody around me said I now had a spring in my step that they
Mhm.
never saw before. My wife said, there he is. That's my husband. That's the happy guy.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
was going to ask a question, but you kind of answered it. So I was going to ask a question around family dynamic, and when you've got values, you've got a wonderful job situation. The obvious thing is to take it, but actually you've got to think about the values. Is it, this is when you first took the job. So at that point, I guess you have a conversation with your partner, your wife, work out, there's a value that's out of sync here. How can we make that work? And you look at the mechanics of maybe making little tweaks in your life, so forth, so it can mesh together, and then you're able to do the job. And now we get into, so at the end where you decided, actually I'm going to leave this job because it's evolved, and they, even when I'm at home they're ringing me, and at weekends they're ringing me, and how can you switch off? You can't switch off if they're ringing you when you're at home. So is that a rut, or what is that to your mind?
To me, it is what could be in the rut, because
Okay.
it's in the sense of letting that work environment or that kind of toxic environment impact those other areas of your life. So, I'm at home on a Saturday thinking about a project that could really wait till Monday.
Mm.
Because I'm off the clock. I'm like, well, even though I was on salary, but, or I'd have people on my team call me because my leader was contacting them on the weekend to get work done.
Yeah, and that's like, how can you give your best on Monday to Friday? I guess typically that's how people work, not exclusively, but
Yeah.
use that as an analogy. If you have no time to kind of switch off and have that family time, which I guess is one of your values.
Yeah. And it turns out that work environment, that situation was creating a routine in our home where it was so bad that when our adult kids came to visit us, they would actually ask my wife as they're about to leave or after they left, "Are you and Dad okay?
Mm.
You know, are
Mm.
you're not getting divorced, are you?" Like that's where their minds were
Yeah.
going. And she asked why, and they said, "Well, Dad just seemed irate the entire time we were there,
Mm.
not at us, but
Mm.
just in general. And we thought he was mad at you." And my wife's like, "No, he's not mad at me. His
Mm.
job sucks.
Mm.
And it's taken a toll on him and he hasn't seen it. And, he's gained weight because of it."
Mm.
So that the stress was there. And I felt like at that point in my life, I felt like this is a job I need to be in because I need to support my daughter who's going to college.
Mm.
My wife and I have a lifestyle that we enjoy now, and I need this paycheck to cover that.
Yeah.
I've got a bonus coming, and I found myself making
Yeah. It's just a
trade-offs. Yes. Oh, it was
bonus.
a nice
The
bonus.
credit bonus. It's like,
It was a 5-figure bonus that I passed up just to quit
yeah.
my job. And if and people said, "Why don't you just stick it out for another month, get the bonus, then quit?" And I'm like, I won't last that long. I will burn out, and it'll cost who knows what.
Mm.
Um, and but yeah, I really took a look at what was going on in my life, and I felt stuck in terms of like I would go to the office, and it just felt like I couldn't leave my office.
Mm.
There was no future,
Yeah.
and that was the rut for me. Was
Yeah.
what is my future here? I could stick this out for 6 or 7 more years.
Mm.
Maybe I'll get my boss's job when he retires. Maybe. Like
But
there's
it's almost actually, do you want that? Is the Holy Grail staying there for 7 years? And I think you'd already figured this out, but I'm just, surmising in my head. It's like, is that the Holy Grail? Doing something that, I don't know. Is that the
yeah.
Holy Grail? But so the podcast, where did that, so were these events kind of inspired to kind of put the podcast together? How did that come together?
Oh, the podcast has been around since 2015. So it was the podcast that helped save me in a sense.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because when all this was going down, when I realized my job was taking a toll on me and that I found myself in my own rut,
Mm.
it was by having this show for over 7 years that made me realize, wait, I am a host of a show that talks about getting unstuck out of your rut and live the best life you can live while you got it. And here I am sacrificing my dream to
It's
be an
ironic, isn't
author.
it?
Yeah, it was just like mind blown. And like I am the host of a show that is all about this irony that I'm in right now. And even my job, like my whole job was to go into other departments where there was a negative team dynamic and help fix it.
That's
And
difficult. That is difficult.
yes. And in my own team, I couldn't fix the team dynamic that was going on. It's such a blow to my ego for one, and my confidence for another. But yeah, the show had been around since 2015. There were 3 of us who got together, and we wanted to inspire specifically Christian men in their 30s and 40s who are married. They've got children. They've got all the boxes checked for success, but deep down inside, they feel like they're not living a life of significance. They're not making impact, and they feel like that instead of pursuing their dream or their goal, they gave it up for safety and
Mm.
security. And
Yeah.
so how do you get that sense of safety and security financially and still pursue your family, still have those tight relationships and feel like you're making an impact with your life? And that's what started the show in 2015. I took over the show in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic, and yeah, the end of last year, 2022 was that aha moment for me that you talk about this every week, you yourself are in it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah. But I took my shows about failure, and I fail all the time. But it's kind of like, it is ironic when these things happen. But I guess to my mind, the failure piece, it isn't. It's kind of like, it's how we react. It's reframing it.
Yeah.
Being, having the right mindset with it, and there are ways that we can react to failures. We can use to our advantage, and I guess the same with what I love about what you're doing, because I think that we're in ruts, can be in ruts. I'm sure people that are listening now are probably thinking about different things in their life where maybe it's not quite right there. Actually, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, maybe I should be looking at my values and seeing aligning those to a job dynamic, a relationship dynamic, a fitness dynamic, a financial dynamic, and there's lots of different. I love the way that you sort of, you interconnect those those elements. So the people listening that may be thinking that they're in a rut, or maybe they aren't sure, are there telltale signs or things that they can maybe look out for?
Um, in a way, yes. But it's somewhat subjective though. Like I can't
Yeah.
just look at you and say, Paul, you're in a rut.
How did
Here's
you
why.
know?
Yeah, I would have no idea. Yeah, exactly. Like people looked at me and had no clue I was feeling the way I felt. It was just sort of an aha moment I had within myself. And really, if you feel stuck, I think that's the best way to describe it. If you feel stuck,
Yeah.
that if you kind of project a little bit forward in your life, 5 years from now, and nothing changes, do you feel like you're better off or do you feel like you're more stuck?
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're going to be more stuck, you're in a rut. You're either in one or you're facing one.
Yeah.
And like now's the time to start thinking about, okay, so if nothing changes and I'm going to be more stuck than I feel right now, what's the opposite? What do I want to feel instead? What do I want to achieve instead? What do I want my success to look like 5 years from now in the areas of my faith, family, fitness, finances, and my future growth? And then you'll see there's a gap. And so from there, it's like, okay, I know I feel stuck. I feel stuck in these areas of my life. For me, like when I left my job, my faith was fine. But when I looked at my strain on my family and I looked at my fitness, my personal health, like I had gained like 30 to 35 pounds because of the stress I was going through. Those two things, financially, I was fine. Future growth, my career was growing. I was growing in terms of knowledge, but just career wise, it wasn't going to grow where I was.
Yeah.
So I was able to identify 3 ruts, one on my family, one of my fitness levels, and then the future growth of my career. If I stayed where I wasn't really going to go anywhere. So then where do I want those to be? Well, this job isn't worth losing my family, period.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what's interesting around that, I was just thinking that once you identify them, actually, you've got a unique opportunity to actually, once you've figured out that these things aren't for me, then the next step is there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity to lean into really what I want to do.
Yes.
What fits into those areas that you define, like family, my fitness, my health. And I guess it's having I'm sure you used the word courage in your book today. And I guess it's having a little bit of insight and courage to kind of to be able to look at like you in your example, you decided that the job wasn't serving you anymore. So to me, it's a courageous decision, because there would be people that think Jerry just handed his notice in. Can you believe that? There'll be people really, that that were people WhatsApping people and emailing, Jerry just handed his notice in. What is he doing? And it's potentially because they, some of those guys potentially are really happy there, which is great. But there might be one or two thinking, I wish I had the courage to do that.
Yes. And part of it for me also that gave me the confidence that I could leave the job. And this was the thing my boss was probably counting on, was that nobody was really living with a cushion. A lot of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
I didn't, and I still don't. Yeah. And so I knew when I left, and my wife knew that when I left my job, I would have a 6-month cushion, a 5 to 6 month cushion. Actually, we had 3 scenarios that we drafted. We could, actually 4. We could just keep doing what we're doing, change nothing in our expenses, and we have 5 months to do whatever the next thing is. We can kind of scale back, eat beans and rice at home, top ramen, act like we're in college again with a college diet of like cheap foods, and we could stretch those savings to about 9 months. She's like, well, I like the 5-month window better. I'm like, okay, that's reasonable. I said, now here are 2 other options. we could have a screw it, let's have fun, and we can make that money last for 1 month. And she's like, no, that's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
We're throwing that one out. I'm like, but it helped reinforce the decision. 5 to 6 months was the way to go. And I said, the other thing is we can cash in everything, retirement fund, the investment fund we've got over here, and we could just take a 1-year hiatus if we wanted to. And so we had those resources that we'd saved up for a while, and that would help us kind of hit that reset button. But what we chose in the end was, let's rely on the savings that we do have that is specifically for this kind of situation, and live for 5 months. Take 3 months off, think about what you want to do, either get a new job or launch a new business. And what we chose in the end was finish the book, launch the book, create a business. Now do it. Now go make some money.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love that story, because I think, I've said it to a lot of people. So if people probably hear this on a lot of podcasts of late. So Stephen Pressfield, he talks about shadow lives and around the fact that it's very easy for us to kind of live a life that is maybe somebody else's life that we end up going into. And some people might love the job or love the experience. And many of us don't get to the point where we're able to exit a shadow life and actually live the life that we want to, because of fear, because of resistance, because of a whole bunch of different things, and because of a lack of maybe confidence that we've got, the ability to actually. A shadow life doesn't mean, or living our own life doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be an entrepreneur and do it all ourselves. It might mean that it's just a different job, it's a different career, it's a different 9 to 5. But so the reason I mentioned that is because I love the fact that you made that decision, you took time to reflect, and now you've got the podcast, you've got the book, which I was astonished that you did that in 6 months. Was it 6 months you did that, which was phenomenal?
Yeah. From the moment I got serious about it. So I started it in 2019. Now this is a year 1 goal for the show. Like, we were supposed to have a book by 2016, but I started in 2019, and then I took the job that we were talking about, and that book went on the back burner until the start of 2022, when the coaching group I was in for podcasting said, how come you don't have a book? You're like the only guy in this whole group who doesn't have a book. I'm like, yeah, how come I don't have a book? And they're like, Jerry, we think you got a book in you. I'm like, I kid you not, I got an outline and a very rough draft sitting in Google Docs right now. And they're like, well, make it happen. So I kind of wrote, I did air quotes, guys. I kind of wrote from January till about September. Or August, but it was like off and on. Like, I'd write for a morning, not touch it for 2 to 3 weeks, write a little bit more, not touch it for 2 to 3 weeks. So August 2022 came around, and I still did not have a finished rough draft. I went to a podcast conference, met a group there called selfpublishing.com, and I just realized this is my moment of truth. If I buy into them, and the reason why I bought into them was that they weren't just going to show me how to self-publish. They were going to give me a book coach to hold me accountable. They were going to do a lot of things for me as far as like cover design, helping me hone in on a title and subtitle, categories and keywords for SEO on Amazon.
All right, really? You get a lot?
Yes. And then they were going to charge me for it. And I was like, okay, but I can earn that money back. So it's kind of a mitigated risk. As long as I do the work and I listen to them and follow their lead, it'll be a mitigated risk. I'll get that money back. And I shared that with my wife. She was like, well, you got a book, you're close to it. What's the difference? I told her. She's like, okay. And you're confident you can earn that money back? And I said, yes. And it may lead to speaking engagements.
Yeah, but it's actually a false economy, isn't it? Because the outlay, the thing is, it's even more than that. It's about, it's even more than, I get, money's money, so it's important. But actually, your book is going to impact so many people globally in terms of people becoming aware of ruts and actually get themselves out of ruts. Your book is going to be so impactful. It's going to make you money, plus it's going to impact, inspire. People will have better dynamics with their work colleagues, their family, and even people on the street.
Yes. Yeah. And that was the messaging or the purpose behind the book. Like it just needs to earn enough money to pay for the costs I put into it.
Yeah,
That's all I care about
yeah,
for the finance part of it.
yeah,
The reason why I wanted that book done was I knew I needed to get the Beyond the Rut message out there
mm,
in more than just the podcast form.
yeah,
And so I figured the book was the best way to kind of summarize that entire message together. And if you want more of it, you can listen to the podcast. You can come read some of the blog posts that I put on LinkedIn and on my own website, beyondtherut.com. Um, and so that was the why behind the book was I'm still saying the same message of living a life that's meaningful for you in your faith, family, and career, but it's in book format and it's an ebook, it's paperback, it's an audiobook. So it's like, oh, I don't like to read. Hey, listen to it. Or, like I like to share with hosts the audiobook because you can at least listen to it at double speed,
yeah.
knock that thing out in an hour. So it's a very short
You've
book.
done a brilliant job, by the way. So
Thank you.
very, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and yours quality there on point.
Thank you.
I think as a first audio book, really good. And what's it like? So just as a curiosity question, actually, bit of a selfish question. So the actual process of, are you coached in terms of how to do the audio piece?
A little bit. So my book coach put me in touch with a guy who had recorded it before. And so that guy kind of gave me some bonus coaching that I really didn't pay for, but they all want me to
You
succeed.
might listen. Say that. Take that.
They're like, Jerry, have to take that.
Charge Jerry.
But that was the cool thing about this group is that they really want to drive value. They wanted me to succeed so much that this guy named Nate took the time to share with me Audible's criteria.
Okay.
And he said, based on his own experience when he published his book, Crushing Your Kryptonite, that he had his microphone set up. He had a studio where it dampened the echo. And he even did things like to make sure that he was well hydrated so that he didn't have a lot of mouth crackling noises. And he would be sure to take a step away from the microphone, to take a breath, to help reduce the amount of editing his sound engineer would have to do on their end. I wound up doing my own audio processing, but having done that, I will definitely pay a professional to do it next time because it was so, like, I recorded the book in 8 hours.
Yeah.
It took me nearly 2 weeks to process the audio.
So what do you mean process the audio?
So amplifying the soundtrack so that was uniform for loudness, and then going back and doing.
I definitely wouldn't do that.
Like a noise reduction.
Yeah.
To get like the humming of the air conditioner out or something like that, and then going through, because even though I took steps back from the mic to take a breath, when I did the amplification, you'd hear almost every third or fourth breath. So I'd have to go through and silence those. And even though I stayed hydrated, on occasion there'd be some mouth crackling or a pop, and I have to like cut those out. So yeah, I'd have to listen through, silence a little piece, listen to make sure I got it, and then continue on. And that was a very meticulous process.
Wow, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And what's interesting, having doing podcasting now, is that the editing process, because I edit as well. I'm not the best editor, but I can edit. And what I always find interesting is how the vocal cords, how pronounced it becomes to you. When I didn't podcast, I just would engage content. I did it would just do it. But now I spot every little imperfection, even if I'm listening to radio, listen to radio or TV, all the little imperfections that you hear in people's voices. They're not really imperfections. It's just how we talk normally. But when we're creating audio for publishing, we take things out because it doesn't sound great and it's a little inconsistent. But I guess the way that we talk normally is the way that we talk normally, but for a production piece, we kind of take things out.
Yes. Yeah. For the audiobook, way much more work into, like, an episode of my show. I'll do an amplification, I'll do a noise reduction, I'll truncate the silence, and then from there I'm just editing for content. Like, hey, Jerry rambled for 7 minutes about tacos.
Same.
That needs to come out.
What am I talking about?
I think there was one episode where I like went off about like seagulls for 2 minutes. I'm like, what did this interview
Yeah.
have to do with seagulls? Like,
Yeah.
how did I get on seagulls? And I'm like, that's coming out. Boom.
Yeah.
But I don't like get to the nitty, like remove all filler words or audio process. But when it came to the book, like that had to be near perfect, and that was hard.
Yeah.
A
No, you've
couple
done
times.
you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
You know, I first, and hopefully one day I'll do a book, and if I get to that level, you know, I'd be delighted. I don't think I'd be doing the processing like you did. I don't think I've quite got the patience for that. But yeah.
It definitely should be your voice, though. People want to hear your voice.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was keen to ask the question, because you know your voice came across incredibly well on that, and and when I read that, you know, you did this in 6 months, I thought, oh, well, mate, that's amazing. 6 months, and to, you know, do the book and to do the audio and whatnot, amazing. And the people that are listening now, where can they get the book?
It's currently on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon.com,
Yeah,
search Beyond the Rut,
yeah.
you'll see the Kindle ebook pop up. You'll see my podcast pop up, and then the paperback version. So that's where you can find that. I think I'm still about 40 days away from the Audible version to really pop up. It's going through the
Really?
process and the checks and
Amazing.
balances. I went through a company called Findaway Voices.
Mm.
So if you really want the audiobook, just go to either Google Play, Nook Audiobooks, Kobo, Kobo, and you can search for the audiobook that way. But if you buy the book, the ebook or the paperback, I'm giving away the audiobook for free. So just, you know, if you like to read, but you also want the audio companion with it, just buy the book, either ebook or paperback, and you'll get the audiobook for free.
Yeah, because some people like to have a physical book, don't they? Like they like to read, then they like to mark and take, you know, which I think is good as well. But I listened to it today and exercising, so brilliant. And also, do you have a community? Is there
I call everybody Rudder Nation, but I don't have like a specific. I figure there are a lot of groups out there already. But if you want to connect and you want to connect with the people I know, best place to go is LinkedIn. Just follow me, connect with me. I'll say yes. And just keep an eye out for my threads and engage with those. And you'll meet people just like me, people who either listen to the show, follow the show, inspire me to keep doing the show better. All that is there. And I just lump everybody in and call them Rudder Nation.
I love that when I heard that. And your podcast, is that on all the normal directories? You know, when do you publish?
The interview-based shows come out on Mondays.
Okay.
And then I do a short, although I haven't done a short episode this past week, or I guess by the time you guys hear this, it doesn't matter. But I do a short episode on Thursdays typically, where I either recap the interview for the week and pull out like the topic that stood out to me the most, that's practical. So the Thursday short episode I call Jerry's Short. It's about 5 to 7 minutes of very pinpointed practical advice. So the story is removed from a lot of it. You get one piece of advice or a how-to, and hopefully that's something applicable. But the big meat and potatoes is the Monday interview.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's always fun.
Okay, lovely. So we'll put all the details in the show notes. And Jerry, it's been a delight talking to you. It was definitely worth the wait. Hopefully we can have more conversations, and I'm definitely keen to know when your next book is coming out, and will that be done in 3 months as opposed to 6? So
I think it depends on the topic.
So if I do a book, I'll definitely be reaching out to you for some advice. And Jerry, so there is a reoccurring question on the podcast, and I'm going to ask you the same question. So if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, who would you invite?
I would definitely invite my wife, because food is involved, and I like to do dinner with her. But as far as famous people, there are 2 that always stand out to me. They're night and day. General Patton, no nonsense kind of guy, very tough, and then Mother Teresa.
Okay, lovely.
So, the very opposite. And I would just love to see the conversation between the 2 of them, but also with us. And I'm just a big fan of like the idea of being the tender warrior. So being tough when you need to be, but be tender when.
Yeah, That would be an interesting dynamic, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That'd be, yeah. Mother Teresa, she's got a few mentions. So at some point, I need to have a poll on the website, not just a chart where you can follow who's going to get the most dinner, who's going to be,
Right.
who's going to be eating the most. But Jerry, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and inspirational and insightful. So thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show, so please do share this episode far and wide, particularly if you know people that are in a rut and are keen to move beyond that. Or even if you're in a rut, then maybe you can, if you've got any takeaways and you want to contact Jerry, please do that. And your feedback is most welcome. We're keen to hear about the things you like and also the things you don't like, so in equal measure. So any feedback would be fabulous. You can contact me at paul@myperfectfailure.com or via the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.